Okay, so let's talk about garlic for a minute. Besides pumpkins, I love garlic. How do I tell you how much I love garlic? If there's like pumpkins, garlic, that might be it. All right, well, anyways, I love pumpkins and I love garlic. So I love growing garlic, and it is super easy. I have had a lot of success with it. My first crop of garlic that I grew last year, I planted in late October, and I harvested them in mid-June, and they were fantastic. Most of them were pretty large bulbs. But now it's time to plant new garlic. So a couple words about where to get your garlic. You can obviously buy it online. There's lots of farms and places where you buy seeds online that you can buy seed garlic. Now, the garlic that I plant is not a true seed. A seed would be what the flower of a plant produces, and that would be the genetic offspring of that plant. So I'm not actually planting that. I'm planting from actual bulbs. And so the little cloves that are in garlic, I'm going to peel those apart and I'm going to plant those. So if you've ever grown tulips and you've had multiple years of successful, healthy tulips, you'll notice if you dig them up that they start to split. But what they're really creating is kind of a cloned version of themselves on the side. So that is what we would call a set. Onions do the same thing. Garlic is a patient crop. So I'm going to plant here around the 20th of October, and I'm going to harvest. I think I could probably harvest even earlier this next year, early June, maybe even late May, depending on what the winter is like. So garlic needs to winterize in the soil. You can cheat that by putting it in your fridge. There's some people online that have talked about a certain number of days or months that it needs to be in a fridge or a freezer so that it can get to a colder temperature, because it needs to go into a dormant stage. That's the same with tulips, actually, with a lot of bulbs. That's why we plant them in the fall. Now, in my Zone 7A, we have winter. It is real winter, but it ain't that cold, right? I think the extreme is like -10, which I've never experienced, and I hope I never do, to be perfectly honest. Okay, so now what type of garlic to plant? So there are two main types of garlic that you need to know about. One is hardneck garlic, and the second is softneck garlic. So softneck garlic is really the only one that I care about because it tends to grow better in warmer climates where I live. If I lived up north, hardneck garlic would probably be a better choice for me because they are more cold hardy than softneck garlic. The only real difference is that hardneck is exactly what it sounds like. It has a tough kind of woody stem when the green leaves come out, and over the growing season it gets really tough. So when you pull it out of the ground, it feels like you're pulling a stick out of the ground, and it's not going to braid very well. Soft neck is exactly like it sounds. It has a soft neck to it. It's not woody. You can bend it really easily. It's great for braiding, and that is typically the type of garlic that you'll find in the grocery store as a soft neck variety. Most of the garlic in our country comes from California. A lot of it comes from Gilroy, which is one of my favorite places. It's the garlic capital of the world. If you've never been, I suggest going. This is a photo of the first time I went to Gilroy. I love garlic that much. So what I typically plant is a California white garlic when I buy my seeds. Now, again, they're not true seeds. These are garlic cloves or sets of some kind. When I buy them from the grocery store, which is typically a big no-no, oftentimes our root vegetables like potato and garlic are sprayed with some sort of chemical that decreases the risk of the vegetable sprouting in your pantry, right? Which makes sense for storage, but we don't want that when I'm planting in the ground because I do want it to sprout. So sometimes it will never sprout, and sometimes they will sprout and grow a little bit green and then die a couple weeks later. Now, I have not had that issue. I only buy my garlic from high-end organic. Let's be honest, it's Whole Foods. That's where I bought it. So I know that Whole Foods is probably less likely to spray their vegetables with something. I also buy cloves of garlic that are big because I want the big bulbs, right? Because the garlic is actually going to form a bulb around the tiny clove that I put in the ground. So the bigger that clove that I put in the ground, the more likely it is, one, to succeed because it's got more energy stored, but two, it's going to have a little bit more to build around. So I'm going to take these garlic bulbs apart. I'm going to keep the paper on each individual clove, because that will help protect it from fungi and bacteria in the soil, because it's gonna sit in there for about 10 months, which is a really long time. So I'm just gonna peel off this paper, just like I would if I was gonna cook garlic, which maybe I will tonight. Also, when I choose garlic to buy to eat, I always smell it in the grocery store, because in my experience, any of the aromatic root vegetables like onions and garlics and leek, they taste better if they smell good. So the smellier the onion, the better it tastes, in my experience. I also, when I buy the garlic, I make sure it has roots on it of some kind. If it comes from California, which most of it does, it should have the roots on it. So here's what I love already about the cloves that I'm pulling out here. They're ginormous, right? These are big cloves, which would be great to cook with, but also are gonna be really great to plant. And I'm just pulling them apart, trying to be careful not to cut them with my fingernails. Yeah, there we go. And I don't have to plant every one that's in here. The centermost cloves typically are a little smaller. I don't plant those, I'll just cook them tonight. And, you know, as you can see here, well, maybe you can, the paper has come off a little bit. I want to keep as much of it on there as possible on the clove, but it's not always possible. Alright, so I have just laid out 36 cloves that I'm planting here in the middle of this bed. Earlier in this season, I had huge kale, curly kale that was growing here in the middle, if you remember. And then I've had these carrots growing here on the side, and you'll actually see I've got 2 carrots that are blooming. So right now I've got about, let's see, 3 rows of 12 each right here. I've got kale, curly kale, and I think cabbage flanking it on the side. These were my tomatoes that were right here that were growing up. They grew to be about 8 to 10 feet tall. I Florida weaved them up here. And on the side, I still have my morning glories growing. I still have my morning glories growing. My morning glories, they're growing still. And they just still bloom all day long now because it's Florida. I don't want to take them down. I will take them down probably after the first frost. So I'm gonna make some divots here. I try to practice no-till gardening, which means I'm not gonna plow this. There's no point in doing that for gardening, for garlic. Some people say that with root vegetables they need really soft soil, but I top dress this with a layer of compost each year, or at least I'm supposed to soon. I hope I have enough compost or I'm gonna have to go get some. And compost is so light and airy anyways, I don't ever worry about having soil that's too compacted that my root vegetables aren't going to grow. My carrots, I had some really long carrots that grew really well this season, so it's not a concern for me. A couple final notes about planting garlic. So as you saw, it's pretty easy. I just made little divots. I started with my bamboo sticks to see if that was easier, but it wasn't, so I used a shovel. One important thing to know is that when you peel the garlic, you'll see there's a bottom side where the roots were of the bulb. That's the side that needs to go down into the ground. The top side, that's gonna sprout green leaves. The bottom side's gonna grow roots. Of course, it's gonna grow roots first. And I just planted these about an inch and a half, maybe 2 inches deep. A good rule of thumb when it comes to seeds, which again, these are not technically seeds, is that the bigger the seed, the deeper it can go. Sunflower seeds, you can plant deeper than carrot seeds, which basically need to be almost sprinkled on top of the soil. These are very big bulbs, so they can be planted a little deeper. All right, thanks so much for joining. That was garlic. I'll let you know how they come up.